At the end of World War One, you had the big four. You had Wilson from the United States, you had Clemenceau from France, you had George from England, and Orlando from Italy. They all got together and they were going to come up with this peace treaty to figure out the terms of surrender or what to do after World War One. Woodrow Wilson went in there with the idea of having 13 points. His 13 points mainly were talking about a fair and equitable peace for everybody. The other three countries, France, Italy, and England, were saying no. This whole war was Germany's fault. Germany needs to be punished. The United States shouldn't come in here and dictate terms because they weren't in this war as long as we were. They didn't lose nearly as much as the rest of the Allies had lost during the war. Wilson was saying any peace treaty that's not fair and equitable to everybody will just cause problems. Italy disagreed. The other allies disagreed. And Wilson said, well, just give me the 13th point, which was the League of Nations, which would be this big body of representatives representing every country in the world. Whenever there was an issue, they would get together at the League of Nations and talk about it peacefully, and hopefully that would solve the issues of war in the future. Wilson felt like that they could do whatever they wanted with the peace treaty as long as the League of Nations was a part of it. They could fix any injustices that the treaty caused later in the League of Nations. So the other three big allies said, okay. Wilson comes back to the United States, and the U.S. Senate fails to ratify the Treaty of Versailles. We had just gotten done with this war. We didn't want, it sounded like to a lot of people that this League of Nations, if there was a conflict, say, between Italy and Greece, and it turned into a war, that we would have to enter the war. We didn't want to be involved in any more things that were happening in Europe. So the treaty was never ratified in the United States, which led to the League of Nations not being strong enough because we weren't a part of it. And that led to this huge creation of kind of a vacuum of power in Europe, and it kind of led to the fascism, and it led to the dictators being able to get power because that treaty was so awful. So let's talk about the beginnings of World War II. Part of the treaty said that Germany had to pay for the total cost of the war. So Germany just printed up billions of German marks, which was the currency at that time, and their money basically became worthless. After World War I, many nations were struggling to rebuild. A global depression, the Great Depression of the United States, that happened everywhere. It led to high unemployment and really this sense of desperation in Europe. The Treaty of Versailles also created bitterness among many nations. With this climate of uncertainty, of not knowing really what was going to happen next, nationalism increased, and citizens turned to totalitarian dictators to rule the nation. You had Joseph Stalin in 1924, who took the place, came into power after Lenin passed away, who was the founder of the communist regime in the Soviet Union and kicked out the czars and the Romanov family. If you've seen the movie Anastasia, that's all about that. You had Hitler, came to power in 1933, promising jobs and promising to get out of the Great Depression. You had Mussolini in Italy that promised to restore Italy to their former position as a world power. You've got Franco, who won the Civil War in Spain. And then you have Hideki Tojo, who seized kind of power in 1941 in Japan. There is Stalin, Mussolini, and Hitler, Tojo. So totalitarian dictators control all aspects of the government and the lives of their citizens. Totalitarian leaders gain support by promising jobs, promoting nationalism, and using propaganda. Their ideology was about setting goals for the state and glorifies the aims of the state. It justifies government actions. They used modern technology. They spread mass communication quickly through propaganda. They had advanced weapons. The leaders, all of those totalitarian leaders, were very dynamic. They were incredible speakers, highly charismatic. They united people. They symbolized government and encouraged popular support through the force of their will. Dictators held on to power by using censorship, secret police, denying liberties, and eliminating opposing political rivals or parties. The state has state control of individuals, demand loyalty, denies basic liberties, expects personal sacrifice for the good of the state. How did they stay in power? Again, police terror, indoctrination, censorship, persecution. They would control everything from business, labor, housing, religion, the arts, personal life, youth groups, and they made sure it was just a one-party deal. They dominated the government. That's it.